We have more kids in middle schools that they're not just struggling reading, they cannot read.
For literacy, our goal is going to be that every student in Westwood ISD will be reading 2 years above grade level.
Produced by Podcast Architects.
Welcome back to another episode of The Path Forward here at TASA Midwinter 2024 with Evolve to Solve. So I have a couple of brave participants. The man, the myth, the legend, Superintendent Westwood, the Great Wood of Westwood, Wade Stanford. Wade, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Rick. It's exciting to be back again, just to like lean into this work and learn together.
You're one of our favorite guests. You're one of everyone's favorite guests. Everybody's like, hey, when you have Wade on, it's like, hey, do y'all just want Wade to have the show? I mean, because I'm trying.
They don't want that, Rick. I do a radio show every 2 weeks, and I can tell you they don't want that.
That's a good. And let me introduce our hot seat for the day, friend, Curriculum Associates Vice President, Claudia Salinas. Welcome.
Muchísimas gracias.
And I must say, this was spur of the moment. So Claudia, she graciously accepted, not knowing what she was getting herself into. And so the rules, right? Not scripted. We have not talked about questions or anything. We're given a chance as a superintendent to dive into something that is a struggle, maybe for their district, maybe across the state. And we've got a service provider that maybe can help, but there's probably going to be a little push and pull. So Wade, let's just jump right in. Wade, you start us off.
Yeah. So Claudia, I commend you. We're in a time that, coming out of a pandemic and working and the state increasing the standards without being able to tell us what the standards actually are, and we feel like we're shooting in the dark. But I commend you for coming on and saying that. And the cool part, Rick, is that we actually use the product, mm-hmm. and iReady is used at our elementary campus. So for somebody like me that's at a superintendent level that actually knows we're using the product, but I probably don't understand everything that it does. I know there's some diagnostic in it, and I know that it works on ability levels and things like that. So kind of give us an overview of what like iReady does.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you I am honored to be here because I think about education, like it does take a village. And as a provider, content developer, partner, that's how I like to see myself, as a partner to you. We're part of your community. So we want to make sure that we're working for student achievement and growth. But if I step back about iReady and what I think about the standards and everything that's changing, one of the things that is critical for us is when we tell you, a superintendent, your board, a leader, a teacher, we need to tell you where your kids are in relation to grade level. So when you only look at data, at that normative data, you're comparing kids against other kids, right? And unfortunately, right now, we're looking at the whole bell curve of students across the country has shifted backwards about 9%. So you can look at normative data and you can say you're at 37% percentile norm, but unfortunately, that's already a grade level behind, and
Right.
sometimes 2 grade levels behind. So the key thing is, like, when we look at data and we use our diagnostic, we provide data that tells the teacher where the students are in relation to grade level, to the TEKS, the ungrade level TEKS. We can also give you the norm. But the key thing is, once you have that data, because we are data rich, like we have data everywhere, what does a teacher do with that data?
I think that's the key right there.
It is
I think
key.
that's the key. Rick, that you've got data, and I think we're very rich. As a matter of fact, I think we have too much data
Mm-hmm.
at times. We like to say instead of data driven, we want to be data informed.
Exactly.
And so,
Yeah. And what are those actions? So we also talk about treating teachers' time as gold.
Yes.
That is the only thing you're not going to get back. It's time. But if you think about, if I can save teachers time by telling her, this is what a child can do, and this is the next step for you to do with that student, in that zone of proximal development, and then at the same time have our already personalized lessons supplement or extend the teacher, that is what makes the impact the most. So it's you get your data, but now what do you do with it?
Absolutely. So I've said this in the past, and I'm going to be guilty as charged, and I want you to tell me why I'm wrong here. Sometimes I think of platforms or ed tech or any type of provider like a diet, right? There's a million diets out there. And then if you say, which diet works? I would tell you all of them work if you do exactly what that diet says. If you want to eat cabbage soup for 13 days, you'll lose weight, right? If you want to do keto for 10 months, no carbs, you'll lose weight. But it comes down to, really what can you sustain? What can you take in small doses and make habits out of? But there's kind of a perception like, hey, there's a whole lot of stuff out there, but what actually works and what can I use to impact my students? Is that right? Wrong? A little bit of both?
That is right. We were talking about John Hattie, Dr. Hattie, and his meta analysis that he does. There are things that we should be doing in education that are proven to impact student success. For example, goal setting. Goal setting is like 0.8. That means like if you help your students set goals, they will reach those goals because they know what they're aiming for. It's like you guys were talking about football and you're coaching and how great you look when you coach.
That's exactly not the opposite of what we were talking about.
I think we said just the opposite, Claudia, but that's okay. I like the way you spun that.
But you said goals. You're like, guys, we're going to win this game. We're going to get so many points over the other team, whatever the goal is. Goal setting is critical. So that's part of that. It's not just a platform. It's also that professional learning, that partnership, helping teachers goal set with students using data chats. Then principals goal setting with teachers. How do we move your class? And that goes back to the other part about goal setting. There is typical growth that a child gets within a year, but there's also stretch growth. And that's what we think about with our growth model. We cannot just get the typical growth because that's not enough. If we only think typical, we are going to be very far behind grade level by the time we get to middle school. So we have to stretch them. We have to figure out what is that goal that has been proven that kids can get to. It's a little bit more ambitious, but it is attainable. So goal setting is key. Instead of just this platform, we provide the data, the instructional next steps, but we also help teachers, principals, school leaders. How do you, as a superintendent, how do you set those goals that are attainable because you have that data point?
So dig into this piece. So I support that 100% on the goal setting. And then the writing down of the goal, because without writing it down, it's not going to happen.
That's right.
I think there's research that shows that. So iReady has a goal setting component in it.
Yes.
Okay. So Rick, I want to dig into a piece that you talked about and then I want to get back to the stretch goals. And I'll have to look at my phone to look at this book that I'm reading. So like there's a million diets out there.
Right.
And a million ways to get there. What makes iReady better than the others? What do you feel like separates iReady from other intervention, and I'm going to say intervention, but support partners? And I love the way you said that, because in Westwood, we consider you a partner. You're part of the family. You're part of the Panther family. And so what separates the product?
I think it's our service. So one of the things that's very interesting is like for every one person that's out there working with you at the very initial part, we'll call them air quotation sales, there are 4 people that service you. That is our data analytics. So I have another district, like for example, Tyler ISD, they want to compare how they're doing to other districts that look like them. So our data analytics does custom reports so then they can see themselves compared to other districts. If we're looking at teacher incentive allotment, we have our data analytics teams that helps with that component as well. So that service is key because it's not just you get iReady and we walk away. We are constantly trying to make sure that your implementation is successful because again, I'm part of your family, I'm part of your community, I am a stakeholder, and I have to make sure that your kids are growing. If they're not growing, you should fire me. That's the way we see it.
And there's a piece of ownership in there that I love. I hear it in your voice. And so you intrigued me with that piece that you said that I could get a comparison of other districts that are similar to us.
Yes.
How long does that take for me to get that?
I just need to find the districts that look like you.
Okay.
And then if they are iReady partners already, then we just disidentify the data and then just compare growth and trends.
Great.
And provide that to you. About 2 weeks.
We're going to talk off air then.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, as you're my personal trainer, right? We're staying in the frame of diets and so I'm not getting much out of my personal training. I'm not following the. What are districts not doing and not taking advantage of to not realize their goals, right? Because you'll hear, and superintendents will change, and we change programming, we try something else. What is not being adhered to that it's an absolute must within districts?
I think one of the things that everybody's talking about right now, not just across Texas, but across the whole country, is the importance of Tier 1, right? Everybody talks about Tier 1 is solid. It's extremely important.
Yes.
Strongly believe in that. But more importantly is instructional coherence. Everything that we are doing should serve Tier 1. So for example, I'll just use a random skill. We're working on main idea. What we see is that the teacher is teaching main idea, but then they're being pulled into a small group, and in small group, they're doing something else. And if that child is special ed or has an IEP, they're working on other things. So there's no coherence happening. And so when we think about iReady, our goal is that instructional coherence. So we think about iReady will identify where the kids are and what they need to work on, but at the same time, we created what we call prerequisite report. And this is based on TNTP strategy. We're like, you have to make sure that you're creating an acceleration plan, not just, differentiation. So if I'm about to teach these TEKs in 5th grade mathematics, the same assessment that you took at the beginning of the year will tell you if the kids are ready. And if they're not ready, it tells you, the teacher, what to do in small group to get them ready faster, so then Tier 1 is accessible. So that instructional coherence is key. And we do it the same thing for reading. If your anchor standard is, I'm working on informational text and finding main idea, what kids are ready, what kids need a little bit more support, and who needs foundational skills. Because that's the other part we've seen in our data, is that we have more kids in middle schools that they're not just struggling reading, they cannot read. So we are creating a new system called iReady Pro that focuses on those kids in middle school who are reading below 3rd grade level. So that means they're lacking foundational skills. So we're having to reteach them how to read, like the
phonics
phonics,
Yeah.
but making sure that it is developmentally appropriate, because they are in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. You can't, put baby stuff in front of them. So that's something we just completed, and it's launching for this back to school, because you see it in the data.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's a huge need, and it's been a need since I was a high school principal, that we were seeing kids in high school that could not read. Mm-hmm. We started researching, trying to find programs, and there were absolutely no programs.
Nope.
Nothing. So that's scary.
It is very scary.
It's scary because it takes me into a little bit of a strand that I'd like to go, that there's some research out there. There's the fact that we hear that if we don't have a student reading on grade level by 3rd grade, mm-hmm. there's a very high likelihood they will never read at grade level.
That's right.
There's also the research that says that the prison system researches 3rd grade reading scores and then designs the size of prisons based on that.
It is very sad.
So tell me, because I know what that does to me
mm-hmm.
when I hear that.
Yep. It's very sad.
So your thoughts, early literacy, those pieces, and how do we begin to solve that problem? Because we talk in our district all the time that if we are not doing everything that they need to be at least at grade level by 3rd grade, then we are predicting their path in life.
That's right. So I believe that from 3rd grade through high school, many years pass, and there is so many opportunities for us to change that outcome. Mm-hmm. We just have to put effort into it, right? So what I've noticed sometimes is we are looking at high school. High school gets a lot of attention because mm-hmm. we got to graduate them, but we can't wait. So one of the things is like those early childhood initiatives, instead of, if we want to get to that goal, going back to goal setting, we can't start in 9th grade. we have to start in pre-K,
Yes,
K,
exactly.
and those foundational skills. At the same time, thinking about going back to our growth model, we have these goals, these 2 goals. Every student, no matter where they are, gets a typical goal and a stretch goal. And those 2 goal points are very critical because sometimes if students are very far behind, it may take 2 years to get to that stretch. But what our new research is showing that if students get to stretch 2 years in a row, it is life-changing. They get on grade level and they're staying on grade level. So that is critical for success. So the other thing that we're trying to do is like, we are actually doing it. It's like our scale, we're on a single scale. So I can identify, for example, that a 5th grader is struggling with phonics or vocabulary words or high frequency words or comprehension. So having that data that tells you they're struggling with phonics helps us be very explicit on what are those phonics lessons they need so we can close that gap faster.
So we can be very intentional.
Very intentional. Very
focused.
intentional. Exactly.
And we can get that individualized help that we're looking for.
And sometimes we don't change that outcome because our teachers have the data, but what do I do next?
Right.
What is that lesson? 5th grade teachers are not trained to teach phonics. That's a K2, like in K2 that we spend years mastering that craft of how do you teach foundational skills. 5th grade middle school, that's not necessarily their forte. So imagine that you identify that Rick needs help in phonics. I'm going to give you a lesson for phonics for Rick.
Right. So one of the things that's well, it's been a talk for a long time, right? But it seems to come to almost falling off a cliff. Now we have a teacher issue, meaning it's very difficult for districts to hire, retain, recruit. I think on the whole, most superintendents would tell you that the quality of teachers has lessened just because there's not as many wanting to come into the craft, and therefore you're kind of having to take what you can get. So you've got kind of both ends of the spectrum where you have students that are struggling to a greater degree, and now you have teachers that may be less skilled. How does iReady or how does Curriculum Associates think about how do I make a very novice teacher or maybe less skilled teacher an expert into delivering content through our resources and platforms? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That was a long-winded question.
That's good though. Because to put a little caveat in there, so I think the other piece that is in that teaching world is that probably, I don't know the percentage, but a high percentage of our teachers are alt-cert or working on their certification.
Great point.
So they're trying to teach reading while they're trying to get certified.
Exactly. Yeah, it's very hard. One of the things I'm going to go back to that can-do's the next step. We give you data and we tell you from an asset base, because that's another thing. As a parent of a child with a 504, my daughter's severely dyslexic. It's like, oh, she can't do this, she can't do that. So all of our languages, we start with this is what the student can do. So we start that with the teacher because that reframes their brain. The student can do this. It's high expectations. They can do this. This is what we're going to focus on. So when we think about teachers who are still developing their craft, sometimes they just need guidance or going back, you guys as coaches, a playbook. What do you do when this play happens? What do you do when Charlie cannot do this? So we focus on what he can do and build on that. And then we provide explicit lessons that they do in small group. And then the other thing is that personalized instruction. If we think outside the box, that personalized instruction, so if I have someone who is not an expert in mathematics, my background is mathematics. I love literacy, I can read, but I'm a math person at heart. Most elementary teachers, math doesn't come to them as easy. So one of the things I always share with district leaders is like, hey, if you're gonna have that person who doesn't know the math, use our digital lesson and use it as an anchor point and do it whole group. And it is fascinating to watch. Teachers are like, oh, that's the conceptual development of teaching that math. Because the lessons are designed to be instructional, not just answer choice, and move on. So that also helps.
So it's actually almost like a professional learning piece
It is.
in there. Yeah.
It is.
And
Very
that was going to be my belief is that companies, providers are going to have to embed both ends of the spectrum into what they develop. It has to be a PD for one end and the curriculum for the other ends.
Yeah, and one more thing I'll add to that for that PD, like if I'm an English learner, if you cannot tell from my accent. I was born in Nicaragua. And so one of the focus I've had for a long time is like, how do we create content that integrates those linguistical strategies? Because some teachers, they're getting certified. They may not know anything about English learners. They may not know our ELPs, but we have to address the linguistical needs that our students face. So we integrated them at point of use, so they're there. So whether the teacher is still learning about that, they're going to be able to, the students are going to have that access to that content.
That's good. That's good. So, Rick, if it's all right, I want to shift to the stretch goal.
You're the host.
Claudia, you talked about stretch goals, and so this is something that we're really starting to focus on in our district, and so I think it's pretty cool that we're on a podcast, and I'm going to talk about another podcast that I listen to because I love listening to different podcasts. So I was listening to Ed Milet's podcast, and he had a person, I hadn't looked down because I want to make sure I get it right. He had Dr. Benjamin Hardy on with him, and he was a co-author of a book that's called 10X is Easier Than 2X. And so it's about it's really in a business aspect, and I'm just starting to read the book. But the concept is this, that a 1X or a 2X goal is something that basically any of us can achieve without changing much in our life. We just change about 20% of what we do. We can keep 80% like we're doing, and we'll achieve that goal. But if we were to go to a 10X goal, which is a huge stretch, then we have to change roughly 80% of what we're doing to get there. So we have to really look at that piece. So in our district, we have begun developing 10X goals. We also call them unachievable goals, because when most people hear them, they look at me and go, wow. And so there's these goals. And so for literacy, we're probably going to unveil it on your podcast, I guess, Rick.
I love it.
Yeah. And so Rick, I want you to watch Claudia's face when I say this, okay? So we're getting ready to work on, and we've got the goal. We just don't know the time frame yet, but we're going to put a time to it. And so for literacy, our goal is going to be that every student in Westwood ISD will be reading 2 years above grade level.
That's awesome.
What do you think about her face when I said it?
That's awesome.
I think that as a passionate person, she's excited, but also she's like, that's a heck of a goal, Wade.
Yeah, I'm already thinking, I'm like, okay, what do we need to do to support you to
there
that
you go.
goal?
So there's my question. So as a trusted partner, and the fact is, we cannot continue doing what we're doing and get there.
That's right. Yeah.
We can't.
Yeah.
So we have to look at everything we're doing across the board, and I do agree with Tier 1 instruction is huge. So we have to look at that. So as a trusted partner, what does that mean to you? That 10X goal, unachievable goal, which is going, so we say it this way, it's an unachievable goal that we're going to achieve. There's no question about it in our district. So how are you going to support that? What do you think about that goal, number one? And then how do you feel like y'all specifically can support that? How can vendors start supporting that work?
So I love the 10X. I was thinking, going back to the diet, if I don't drink water all day, I can lose that 1% that I need to lose. But that 10% is like that 10X goal that I need to get to. So immediately I think about like sitting with your team and talking about that instructional coherence. If this is what we need, like what are the tools that I already have that can support you? And if I don't have it, I'm the first person to say, I don't have that. Let me see if I can get it built. But if not, let's look for something else. But it's like, I remember one of my former leaders would tell me, you have to plan your work and work your plan.
Yes.
So we need to sit down and plan what that looks like. And then one of the other things I think about also, in order to get to that 10X goal in literacy that you're saying, Wall Street Journal just published an article about 3 weeks ago. And when they look at the data, what we're seeing is that students are coming in, like I think it was 2 to 8% years behind
Mhm.
in kinder already.
Yeah,
So they're
agreed.
already behind. And so one of the things I think about is like, what are we doing that early literacy? How do we develop a strong foundational skills program that is of high quality, that is knowledge based, that can be embedded in order so we can definitely help you solidify those foundational skills so they start reading to grade levels above. And then I also think about looking for engaging text that is helping them connect with things they want to read about.
Exactly. So there has to be that interest level
Yes.
for that student to read. So I think that, and you talked about, I think you said iReady Pro.
Yes, for middle
So
school.
right, for middle school. So I think that's going to be valuable because we know we're already behind.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to do that even as we start working on our early childhood literacy to try to keep from getting further behind and at some point stop that. So I think the other piece that I think we need in schools is an outside voice that can sit with a team and say, let's go through what you're doing. Tell me what your day looks like. And then just have the honest conversation. You need to get rid of that.
Mm-hmm.
Strategic abandonment. Get rid of that because it's not doing what you need. You're not going to get the results. The great lesson that I love, the one that I love to do, it's not getting that.
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
think we need that outside voice to come in.
Yeah, actually, it's interesting you said that. We're working with a district around the central Texas right now on that strategic abandonment. I actually call it addition by subtraction.
Mhm.
Let's subtract some stuff so we can add growth.
Yeah.
But we did that. We actually worked with them and thought about all the things they have and how do you start thinking about what are redundancies, for lack of a better word. But yes, it is all about
Or just
planning.
ineffective
Or
practices.
ineffective practices. Yes.
May,
Yeah.
may I make a suggestion to that thought, right?
Mm.
If you're doing that with your teachers, you got to do it all the way up the ladder, right?
Mhm.
Because you know this as well as anyone, Claudia, is all the stuff that gets in the way from top down.
Yeah.
Like if this time is sacred and this is a 10x goal, what are we requiring in terms of meetings, in terms of engagement, in terms of all these things that certain people own that may have to relinquish that ownership because if we keep it as is, that goal, we can't meet it.
Yeah.
Because we're taking away, and I'm guilty as charged of doing that, calling meetings, and not thinking through, all right, what's that impacting at the campus level, right? I'm expecting them to do this, and yet I we got this meeting and that meeting. And a lot, if the meetings aren't valuable, we got to be strong enough to say, we probably could do that a different way or
Mhm.
another form of communication.
Yeah, my husband, he's a classroom teacher. He changed careers after working for Children's Medical Hospital, running risk management. He's like, I want to do something different. So he's a classroom teacher. And he talks about this every single night when I'm home. He's like, I don't understand why they're asking me to do that. Like, my focus should be on my students. And that thing that they're asking, I won't name it or the district, but that thing that they're asking me to do is taking away time from my students. So I'm not going to do it. I said, okay, tell your principal you're not going to do it. He's like, I already did. I told them I'm not going to do it because it's taking away time. Like them walking into my classroom and they want me to acknowledge them. I'm like, nope, I'm here to teach. That's what I'm here to do, to excel my students. I'm here for them, not for the adults.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of goes thinking about everything. What are the things you need to take away to make that precious time that they
Absolutely.
need to focus on teaching?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think, Rick, you nailed it. Because I think we automatically go to what's the teacher practices, but I think we have to go to admin practices too.
Absolutely.
And start saying, what are we requiring? What are we doing? What barriers are we creating? And I think that's where an outside voice can help.
I will be there.
Okay.
Top leader actions. That's one of the things we've been focusing on. What are the top leader actions from principals in order so they think about what is it, the things they should be focusing on to help student achievement.
Top leader actions.
Yeah. What are you removing from the plates of your teachers?
Yeah.
What are you removing? What can we remove from their plate? How do I free up my assistant principals, my instructional coaches to be in the classroom?
Yeah.
And that's trying to always focus in that regard. And it's a struggle because a lot of times, not say but collectively, central office will push back on that because they own some of those things, right? Those things that get into into the mix of being able to highly focus on what's important.
Yeah, and then Rick, just people that know me know that I'm very transparent in this. Sometimes central office people want to feel important,
100%.
and so they have these things so that it looks like there's good stuff happening.
Yes.
So I think we have to be very aware of that also.
Yep. You got one more heavy hitter that you want to ask?
No, I think it's I don't think it's an ask, but I think it's a partnership piece that what as a district what we're looking for is what we have, that partner. But I think it's going to be really cool when we come back a year from now, Rick, with Claudia, and we talk about the success story that we were the model school that got our students there. And I literally believe if we can refine our focus, if we can refine what we're doing, that there's no reason we can't get there. And I think we can change the research of how long it takes to get students there.
I think it's I'm all on board for getting to your 10X.
And my challenge for you, Claudia, because I know you, Wade should know everything. Like should be your biggest champion come next year, right? Meaning you are so embedded in the success of Westwood that he is trying to come back on the show with you because of the job that his students have done. And, be the light and the support, because more and more districts are going to need help. I mean, it's just not going the other direction, unfortunately.
No, as a country, as Texans, we all have to move up.
Absolutely.
We do, because here's the bottom line: our kids deserve it.
They
Absolutely.
do.
Not just our kids; all kids deserve it.
All kids deserve it. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you both, Wade, Claudia, for jumping in the hot seat and taking a couple of questions from us and enjoying TASA Midwinter. So you're welcome back. We're going to schedule it for next year.
Yes.
So you got a little pressure on there.
Yes.
So,
he's going to have my personal cell phone, and he is going to text me just like he texts anybody on his staff at any time.
And you know he's prolific on social media. So if you're doing a good job, you'll hear about it. If you're not doing a good job, you'll hear about it. So before we go, Claudia, how do they get a hold of you? How do they reach out to Curriculum Associates if a district needs help?
Yeah, absolutely. You can just go to our website, curriculumassociates.com. There's our Texas landing page, or you can just literally just text me, 214-519-3677. That's how committed I am to helping our students grow.
You heard it here first. Wade, how does anybody get a hold of you if they need some help, if they need just a little encouragement?
You bet. And so you can reach out to me on I have 3 different platforms: social media. On Twitter, it's at Wade Stanford, and then on LinkedIn, you can just Google me or search on there Wade Stanford, then Instagram, and then they can do that, and then I'll get in touch with you and work with you in any way I can.
Yeah, and I would encourage anybody, not just educators, but anybody. Wade's a great follow and very encouraging, very uplifting, and gives a good message. And I'll tell you, it's been several times where it was the perfect time for me to hear it. So definitely give Wade a follow. And if you like what you heard today, you like the conversation, please like, subscribe, share. I mean, we're here to help educators. We're here to help everybody involved with what we need to do for children. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Produced by Podcast Architects.